now that you are sort of living in bliss in a way, I mean, what is your ultimate goal for yourself? I mean, yeah, you want to help the world, and you are both helping the world, but what do you want? What's your, like, dharma? What is it that you want to do with yourself?
Well, even Alan just saying that, helping the world, that's one of the things that iOn really trashes, because he says that if you put yourself in the position of helping other people, it means you're holding them in a less than position. And
I agree with that. You're right.
Right. So that was something that Dave Worster of Cosmic Awareness told me way in the beginning when I told him I was going to medical school. He said, well, you just be careful. You know, don't extend yourself to people unless they come to you, which meant to me, you know, don't put myself above another person to think that I know more than they do, or I'm, you know, their helper or their master.
Let's forget about other people. Now that you've reached bliss or like are arriving, what do you want to do with yourself? What's the purpose of your life for yourself? Not purpose, but what is it that why you, like on the planet, were you and Bob, or just both separate? I mean, what is it that you feel you're here to do?
Have fun is what I've decided since iOn. Before that, it was kind of have fun and do a lot of things. So I put have fun above the do a lot of things, but I just can't stop doing things. So I've got a couple dozen projects, and I just like seeing things done, you know, books and programs.
That's and maybe how you have fun by having
exactly, yeah. And it's interesting because, you know, I've been in medicine, studying it and doing medicine since, you know, my teens. So I've always been interested in passing on information that I glean and learn or just know from common sense. And it's only in the past couple of years with iOn that I've gotten into creating products for people. I mean, that's hugely new for me. You know, I joke about people who've been following me and saying, yeah, you know, I've been following Dr. Dean for 35 years. I knew she'd eventually cave in and go capitalist and start having products. And you know, I kind of laugh because I remember years ago saying when, you know, Andy Weil started selling products, you know, oh, he sold out. But it's quite interesting because I try to work with people one-on-one. Then I wrote books for educating people, and then I did an online wellness program, and I thought that's the answer to healthcare. Get people to modify their lifestyle, teach them how to get healthy and stay healthy. But no one's interested. People want to be given a pill or a potion. They've been so brainwashed by advertising, especially the direct-to-consumer advertising that tells them that they can do whatever, eat, drink, and be merry, and then when you start to die, take a pill. So everyone's been brainwashed. So along comes iOn, and we ask him about the D cell. It turns into the I cell, and the RNA drops, and all of a sudden we have this seemingly miraculous product that people are turning into their blissful spirituality.
And they're doing that because something within the DNA, did you tell me it was like 1,000 strands of DNA that are being reactivated?
Right. Supposedly within us we have 144,000 pairs of the DNA strands. In the body that we seem to inhabit right now, it's only one pair of DNA strands. So iOn says we have 144,000, and they're just in there waiting to be uncovered. Now, some validation around that is 98% of our DNA is junk DNA. which means they haven't identified it, they haven't linked it up with anything, they haven't got a clue what it is. They thought they'd figure it all out with the Genome Project years ago, where they
Carolyn, let me just ask you, when you say 95% of our DNA is junk, 95%?
98%.
98% is junk, so let me just understand that. So it's as if there are these chaotic patterns of DNA that scientists can't seem to understand how they operate, and possibly how they operate is what iOn is saying, that they are actually almost like abstract etheric pairs of DNA that are awakening a higher consciousness of the self, or something like that?
Something like that. I mean, the implication is there that he's talking about the 144,000. If we only have one pair, and then where's the rest of it? And then we can go to science. Anyone can Google 98% and find out it's been called junk DNA because they haven't been able to map it properly or understand what it was. Because when they did, as I was saying, map the DNA sequence in humans, they only found, I think they're saying here, they found about a third of the DNA that they thought they would find based on the protein structures in our body. They thought we needed a certain amount of genes and DNA to create that protein. They found only a third of what they projected, and then they began to even question, well, what is DNA doing? And that's where Bruce Lipton comes in with his work, the biology of belief, etc., where he gave a real shot in the arm to the science of epigenetics. Epigenetics is the environment in which your genes reside. And he's saying it's
consciousness, the projection, not just the environment, Bruce Lipton says in the biology. He says it's our perception, or what we think the environment is also affecting our genes.
Absolutely. Yeah, and when we talked to iOn about that sort of thing, he said, yes, what we're doing with the RNA drops is affecting the ribonucleic acid through chromosome 14 to create perfected and perfect DNA blueprinting to make perfect cells. So what that means, and he described to us that it's within chromosome 14 that we start to have our downfall. It's something about chromosome 14 can make us either embrace our non-physical or distance ourselves from non-physical. When we distance ourselves from non-physical, we begin a downward spiral, kind of getting into addictions and negative patterns and, very, what iOn wouldn't even call it negative or bad, but what humans would call negative or bad behaviors. But when you start perfecting...
Looking up chromosome 14, it seems like that's the chromosome that seems to trigger a terminal deletion, or I think that's right. I mean, what you're saying, it seems like it's the chromosome that triggers the downward spiral or the addictive patterns or something like that.
Yes, there is a validation there when you look at chromosome 14, and one of the major things about chromosome 14, it can become a ring or a cross. And we had great fun with that in our Revelation series, where we went through the book of Revelation with iOn. And we, especially one of the pastors on the series, Ginny Gunther, we were talking about the cross, the actual cross in the Bible is equated with the cross in chromosome 14. And there's something about it going from the ring to the cross that allows the continued replication of the 144,000 double strands of DNA to be created, and that's under the auspices of the RNA drops.
Oh, so the RNA drops affects chromosome 14 in particular. Is that what you're saying?
Yes, the mechanism goes through chromosome 14.
Let me just ask you another question, because you're a scientist. When people look under a microscope and they see, or they've called 98% of our DNA junk, what are they seeing? Are they seeing unstructured amino acids? Why? What does it look like under a microscope, the junk DNA?
Yeah, that is a good question, and I'm afraid I haven't looked at it enough to give you a sufficient answer. I don't know what we're going to be seeing in the people who are taking the drops. iOn has said, when you go for blood tests, just be prepared that the technician is going to be surprised at what they find, and some of your readings may be different. I mean, just a little bit off topic, iOn is saying that we're going to change our blood types as well. So there's lots that's going to be happening, and as for what the junk DNA...
that iOn says that I think is really interesting, he says that some of the radiation that is happening on the planet is actually good for us and part of our evolution. It's also part of a theory I had about evolution, how it's been triggered by cosmic radiation. And
yes, I mean, if we imagine, as we should be imagining, that our body is perfect and not like medicine is trying to tell us. I mean, medicine is actually trying to tell us all the time that our body is stupid and it's giving us cancer and it's causing us all these problems, and that doctors know better than our body, and they've got all these good drugs and vaccines for us. So if we get over all that notion, and you can see how ridiculous it is, and we know our body is perfect and can be perfected, our body should be able to deal with the environment. And yes, when I say environment, I mean physical, chemical, mental, emotional, everything outside the body coming into your body.
But the other thing that supports that argument is that illness is the way the body stays alive when it's confronted with this environmental invasion. I mean, people get fevers because the body is responding to what the Chinese called an evil invasion or some kind of toxic input. So our bodies are sick in order to stay healthy. I mean, in that sort of way.
Yes, and it's an aspect of total biology in German New Medicine that you know about, and I've spoken about a lot, where it's the conflict basis of disease, where when your body is confronted with a conflict, and it usually comes as, a mental, emotional conflict, then in order for it to be dealt with, that conflict is taken from your mind and put in your body in a way to find a solution to the conflict. So your body is constantly trying to find an answer or a solution. So when you have a physical problem, your question should be, what is my body trying to solve by giving me these symptoms?
Right, but not only that, if you get some kind of flu, the symptoms are also how the body maintains its own stability.
Mm-hmm.
When people have a fever, they try to get rid of the fever, but the fever is the body helping you get rid of the illness.
Right. I mean, in naturopathic medicine, we call a cold or a flu a beneficial mucus elimination.
Exactly.
And, it makes me think of a client that I just spoke with actually today, and she talked about her symptoms beginning with just after this incredible period of being really overworked, almost too busy to eat, and really not taking care of herself, and she started to get a cough. And she was too busy to do anything about it. But finally, by December, her friends decided she needed to see a doctor, which she never does because she never gets sick. So the doctor went through the questions. Was she getting hot and cold? And she said no. Has she lost her appetite? No. Was she depressed? No. Has she lost her energy? No. And then he said, with all the, negative to anything that looked like an infection, and with no testing, he just said, well, you've had a cough for long enough. You should take an antibiotic. And I think she said it was the second antibiotic. She hadn't had one in 40 years. So she took it and immediately got really sick. And so she took the antibiotic and got diarrhea. It really tore up her intestines. She probably got yeast overgrowth and a leaky gut from it. And then she went to a Chinese herb doctor. He gave her a whole bunch of powerful herbs that just dried out her lungs and made her diarrhea worse. And then her heart started to go. She started getting palpitations and fast pulse. And, it just went on and on and on. And here it is, March. So that was December. And she told me I could talk about her story. So she talked to me today, and from her story and everything, I said, okay, in October, you didn't eat properly, so you've got a protein deficiency, which will cause fluid retention, which can go to the lungs and not cause any other symptoms.
Right.
Your magnesium stores were already at risk because she works outdoors, sweats a lot, and she wasn't eating properly. So all the heart palpitations and all that was her magnesium deficiency. And she said, well, they told me I had asthma. And I said, well, what will trigger asthma is magnesium deficiency, because when the bronchial tube, the smooth muscle around the bronchioles goes into spasm, then that's asthma. So everything that was going on was just related to her being stressed out and not eating properly, not sleeping, etc. So, here we have...
you helped her with a simple diagnosis then and a simple remedy.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, and this is where medicine is right now. Doctors, maybe it's just a matter of the timing that they have. In a 5-minute appointment, they're not going to say, well, what were you eating back in October? Were you sleeping well? Were you stressed out? Even so, even if they ask all those questions and a person says that they're stressed or whatever, they'll just give an anti-anxiety drug. They're not going to say, take magnesium, because you're burning off all your magnesium. And how can you have, anything functioning properly in your body if you don't have magnesium?
Wow, doctors are so dangerous. I know we're off the point a little bit, but can you just tell the audience how many people die as a result of, doctors and hospitals and hospital-borne infections, every year? It's I don't know the exact, but what is it?
Yeah, 750,000 people.
750,000 people in this country.
In America. What I did, what was it? The Life Extension. They contracted with Gary Null to do a paper on iatrogenesis, and he had some people working on it, and they weren't getting anywhere. And somehow I got into a conversation with him one time, because I used to live in New York, and he just kind of challenged me, and he said, I bet you couldn't find this or that. And I said, okay, let me check it out. So I took the contract.
What you're saying? How many? The statistic?
Yeah. What are the iatrogenic statistics? Because there's nobody on a death certificate, for example.
What's the going to be published by any hospital? Is that why you challenged you?
Well, yes, because on a death certificate, they're not going to say, "Oh, we killed this person." They're not going to say, "Well, it was our drugs that did it," or it's very difficult to find accurate numbers for people who die in hospitals.
How did you find that number, Carolyn?
Pardon me, Alan?
How did you find out exactly how many if they wouldn't tell you?
Right. So what I did is I went to government databases, universities, university studies, and what I did is I found body counts of various illnesses. And what's interesting about statistics is statisticians love to count numbers. So all the numbers ended up being there, like people who died of bed sores, for example. That was like 100,000 people a year. And a bed sore is a treatable, very treatable condition. They did have statistics.
Wait. How do they die of it if it's treatable? Why isn't it treated then?
Because they don't properly treat it. I mean, most of the bed sores are in nursing homes, and they just leave people with their bed sores and don't treat them.
And how does that kill somebody, a bed sore?
They'll get an infection in the skin that, it's an open wound, an open sore, so it'll get infected, and then they die of the infection.
Oh, that's 100,000 people a year die of bed sores?
Mm-hmm.
That's awesome.
I know. It's incredible. I mean, what I found was just heartbreaking because then, bed sores. There was a study in Canada, actually, that said that drugs prescribed outpatients and inpatients, there was something like, I'm not remembering exactly the numbers, but over 100,000 people dying of drug-related injuries, but 2.2 million people with severe injury that could possibly go on to death. Now, I just counted the 150,000, not the 2.2 million, but I made note of that. And the deeper I got, the more numbers I found. And I ended up with 697,000 people dying annually. And then about 3 years later, I did an update for my Death by Modern Medicine book. What I'd been working on was a Death by Medicine paper. And then I expanded that into a bigger book. So 3 years later, I found actually slightly more deaths. The death rate had not decreased, and it was more than slightly more. A couple 100,000 more people dying annually. But what had shifted? Yes.
It shifted. No, I was just going to give you an example, but tell me, it shifted what?
Yeah, what had shifted was the cost of these deaths. What had happened in the ensuing 3 years, because there was that Canadian study showing the death due to prescribed drugs, hospitals started looking at the problem, and what they did was go for cost containment. They saw that it was costing them a lot of money to have all these iatrogenic incidents. So they actually were able to cut the cost, but the death rate kept going up.
How did they cut the cost of the?
I don't know. I do know that they started putting out teams of people to go to the various hospitals to educate doctors and nurses on how to avoid medication mix-ups and real basic common sense things. But as I said, all that happened was that they were able to contain costs, and that for them was what they were looking for. So they started putting out papers saying that they were starting to control this epidemic of iatrogenesis.
Well, I saw that personally. A friend of mine went to the hospital. She wasn't that sick. She felt a little weak, and maybe she was having a little trouble breathing. She gets an infection in the hospital, and then she gets really unable to breathe. So they put a breathing tube into her, and they deep into her lungs to help her to breathe, and they have to sedate her on heavy medication so she doesn't have gag at the breathing tube. And then she never comes out. She dies in the hospital, and now during an autopsy they can't even find out what she died of. So I think the hospital killed her through their procedures, and all their testing, biopsy. It's just, it goes on a lot, but when you know somebody, it really hits home.
Yes, I mean, you could interview, anybody on the street and ask if they have a hospital story, and everybody has a hospital story.
I mean, of course, they can save lives. I don't want to make it like, hospitals, of course, have their place, and they've helped probably millions of people, but it's very, it can go both ways. It's also an awful place for some people, so... they do have their place. Why can't they get rid of hospital-borne infections? Why can't? Is that because the viruses are so strong? The germs are so that they totally resistant, or do you feel it's possible to get rid of eventually these hospital-borne bacteria?
Well, the germs, the bacteria have developed a resistance to most of the drugs out there, and nothing's going to shift until there's a balance between the allopathic medicine and more natural-based medicine, because you can do 80% of medical therapies without drugs. But see, that goes against the patented drugs, the drug monopoly. They want to have a monopoly on all health care treatment. It's really disease care. But I proved it in my practice when I was in practice for 13 years in a family practice, and because I had my naturopathic degree, I was able to treat, as I said, most things with natural means. And at the point where a person needed a drug, I would use the right drug for the amount of time required while boosting the person's immune system, and the drug would work. If I wanted a test, I would know exactly what test I wanted. I mean, the radiologists, they told me later that they knew if I sent them somebody, they would find something. So it wasn't willy-nilly. If I had someone who absolutely required surgery, I would book it on my day off, and I would go in on the surgery. And I would end up saving organs for people, because the doctor would say, oh, she doesn't need this ovary, we can just take it out and not bother with it. And I would actually cajole the doctor into saving the ovary. I'd say, oh, no, you could just dissect it out there. You can save it. And this is how, superficial surgery and medicine is, that it's just like they have these bodies lined up in an assembly line, and they just administer to them with no consideration, as we were talking a little bit about the total biology or the German New Medicine way of looking at disease.
When they start using the RnA drops, they don't even need to go to hospitals.
Yes, which brings us back to that.
But just as far as surgery, I just want to say I bet all the hysterectomies that are done most of them are unnecessary.
Right? That's true.
And there was a way of that. It was like
Carolyn, tell them about your magnesium point. Alan, we get too distracted into this, Alan. Now, let her, a final point on the past, pre-RnA drops, is her discovery about magnesium is the reason everybody's getting screwed up. Tell them about the drug thing.
When I was researching for my magnesium book, Magnesium Miracle, I interviewed a Dr. Mildred Zelig, and she was a magnesium expert. She started out after medical school in the pharmaceutical industry. They wanted to find out what happens to the body nutrients when you take drugs. And that meant she would give a person a drug and take before and after blood tests for their vitamins and minerals. And overwhelmingly, she found that every drug would cause an increase in magnesium levels in the body. And
increase in magnesium levels, you're saying? More magnesium.
More magnesium would be in the blood after the drug. What was happening is the drug would stimulate the storage sites of the magnesium, force it out in order to try to confront the drug and deal with the drug. But in doing so, in detoxing the drug, then the body had a beneficial effect from the magnesium. So Mildred was just astounded. She brought the results to the drug company. They didn't care. She quit and became a lifelong magnesium writer and not a researcher. She wasn't a bench researcher, but she tried to bring this information to the public. Now, how crazy is that? When you take drugs, you make your magnesium levels escalate, your body feels better, but then see what happens. They only run drug trials for about 6 or 8 weeks usually, because by about 8 weeks the side effects are kicking in so badly that they have to stop the trial. But that is also the timing that it would take to deplete your magnesium stores.
Wait, so are you saying we need extra magnesium? You say magnesium supplements, or what's the best way to get magnesium in our diet besides taking drugs?
Well, actually, what we've got is what I put together with iOn was something called Pico-ionic magnesium. It's our ReMag product. And what that is, it's 100% absorbed at the cellular level because it's broken down to a size that can be absorbed directly into the cells. When molecules of magnesium compounds go in the body, they're all kind of conglomerated. But the way this magnesium is created, it's created at the size for 100% absorption, no laxative effect, and we have miraculous results with using this particular type of magnesium.
Oh, that's interesting. Yeah, people don't talk about magnesium. They did for a while, then it was a kind of fad that went out of style. Now they're talking about spirulina again, or whatever it is.
It goes in cycles, but what I found in my research, and most recently actually an Italian study showed that there are almost 4,000 magnesium receptor sites on protein in the human body. So that means magnesium is essential for our protein structure. I mean, we knew that, but we didn't know the incredible extent of it. I used to say...
What's the natural source of magnesium? Like, what would you eat to get those magnesium?
Well, see, this is the problem. 100 years ago, we could get 500 milligrams of magnesium in a decent diet. Now we're lucky to get 200. So even if I could tell...
What foods would contain the magnesium 100 years ago?
Well, that's the nuts and seeds, dark green leafy vegetables, seaweed, which is not a farm food. But what's happened, you can eat those foods now, of course, but if the soil they're grown in does not have magnesium, then you're not going to get any magnesium in the food.
So where do you get your magnesium from for the supplements that you're creating?
That's a mined mineral. There's magnesium in the ocean. It can be distilled from the ocean. There's 3 times the magnesium in ocean water than calcium. Yet what we've done in our society is act like calcium is the only way to avoid osteoporosis. But in fact, what we've been doing is over-calcifying people, giving them brittle bones, giving women breast calcifications that just lead to breast biopsies and a horrendous history. So we've overcalcified ourselves, and under-magnesiumed ourselves to the point where calcium supplements in women are increasing their risk of heart disease. We're getting kidney stones, heel spurs, gallstones, fibromyalgia, calcification, all sorts of problems just because we're not taking enough.
More magnesium will balance out the calcification. Is that what you're saying?
It will. But people have to stop taking calcium. What I found, this woman who I was telling you about, and I was trying to discern from her story, well, why did she all of a sudden become so magnesium deficient that she'd have heart palpitations? And when I went over her previous supplement list, she'd been taking 2,000 milligrams of calcium every day. And
why told you to do that, and why would they tell her to do that?
Well, that's any doctor these days thinks that they're doing preventive medicine if they tell a woman to take calcium to prevent osteoporosis. The RdA is about 1,500 milligrams, and some people think, oh, well, then I should just take a little more. Whereas in the UK, the RdA for calcium is only 700 milligrams. So here we're taking, 2 and 3 times what the UK and the World Health Organization suggest.
I see. Let me see if anyone has a question for you. I can take some questions through BBS Radio. If you have a question for Carolyn Dean and Bob Neverett, you can call 888-429-5471. But should we get back to iOn? And then, at the hour, why don't we take, a little break and Bob could play some music? How's that sound, Bob? Did we lose
No, we want to take advantage of every minute. We don't need no musical break.
No, I just have to, okay, let's take advantage of every minute. Okay, let me ask then a question. If iOn is saying that we don't really need any of this stuff because it's all consciousness, then he goes around and formulates the essential ingredient for rejuvenation, and he also helps you with these other products. So isn't he sort of saying two things?
No. He says there's no such thing as consciousness. He says people don't need to be awakened.
Supplements. He's saying you don't need those supplements.
That's right.
Helping you formulate these supplements.
No, they're not supplements. They're completements. Carolyn says she's in the completement business now, not supplements. Supplements are puny compared to RnA drops. When you complete your cells and get new cells and they're perfect, then you won't have any problems. See, so it's a whole different level here.
Let me just try to understand that concept. They're completements.
Our body is already complete. We just don't know it. So we're uncovering the completement. And I think what happened with iOn in the evolution or the devolving of our relationship is, I kept expressing to him, look, I'm telling people over and over again to take care of themselves. They won't. I created this 2-year online wellness program to help them take care of themselves and take responsibility. They won't. And he said, okay, then we can help you. We can cure cancer, but you just watch. They'll create something worse. So he knows the human nature. He said, okay, if you want something, we'll help you make it, but just beware.
Then they did. But just told us it'll be more interesting and have more challenges in the future to create even new things to counter the new diseases that come in.
So then what we found with the RnA drops, it's not just a physical substance. It actually kind of gave us the answers to a mental, emotional, physical, spiritual...
anomalous, more anomalies, more non-physical, which is going on all around you, more of this anomalous stuff becoming into your awareness.
Yeah, so it was complete. And so that's where completement comes from. It's not just a supplement to tack on to your already less than body. It's acknowledging a more than perfect body. One of our lines is, I'm perfectly happy where I am and ready for more. So this is for people who want more. And
not only more, you become a different person. We have many people who took the RnA drops and then about 2 months later noticed that their arthritic pains went away. They didn't even notice for 2 months that they were feeling better. My theory is, it's not confirmed by iOn, but it's sort of supported by iOn, my theory is that they become a different person with the new cells and don't remember anything they had before. This is how dramatic it is, Alan.
We've knocked Alan out of the park.
You no longer have a pain, you forget you even had it.
I know. They don't even remember having had a condition to be aware that it wasn't there anymore. People will tell us all the time that their relatives will come around and say, why aren't you getting upset? You should be upset about this and that and the next thing that's going on. We don't know what's going on with you. You're too happy. You should be upset. So this one woman who was telling us this.
Become a different person. You mean is it like a soul growth? I mean, I don't think they
No, it's just perfect cells, Alan. And when you have perfect cells, the old cells which you were living within and thought you were don't apply anymore. Now, we're just going to scare people. We don't want people to think, oh, gee, if I take the RnA drops, I'll become different. No, you'll just get rid of your diseases. Just keep it low. But for those that want to be open to it, you'll get a lot more happening.
Yeah, it's, you see, the way disease is continues in your body, or, a scar or wrinkles or whatever, is you keep looking at yourself in the mirror and your mind keeps thinking, oh, I have this scar, oh, this, or oh, that. And you don't allow your cells to get rid of it. But with perfect cells, they cannot have the blueprint of a scar within it.
I'm a perfect example of that. I chipped my elbow in 1963. The humerus, it's called. It chipped off.
Humerus.
The humerus. Yeah, humerus. The humerus. That's humor. I like that. Humerus got chipped off in the elbow, and then they set it, but then it retarded my full extension because it kept scraping every time I extended it. The gathered particles, which then a year later I had to have surgery to clear out the particles.
The calcium, bone chips.
Yeah, bone chips. So it never got full extension. That's 50 years ago. Over the past 6 weeks, I've had to put up with this irritating numbness and weird sensation going on in my elbow, up to my wrist. It's incredible. And I realized it's creating new cells down there. So I just put up with this temporary discomfort, but it's doing it right there. But that's something, I've been on the drops for two and a quarter years. It took that long to get around to that. I had so many other screwed up problems that it fixed all that up first. It finally got to my elbow.
Oh, that's interesting. So it kind of maybe gets to the real immediate, more acute things, and then the long-term conditions, it sort of unravels.
Yeah,
right.
That's right.
It's a priority.
It made what it did do is made my teeth whiter, brought back the enamel in some way. I don't need glasses anymore.
Yeah, but you're the same person, Bob, that I knew 10 years ago.
That's what I wanted to say. I'm the only person who's encountered iOn who survived with his ego intact. I'm the only one.
That's a good thing?
What?
Is that a good thing?
It is, for me.